This is your standard juice section at a grocery store in Glassboro, New Jersey. If you're from Europe, everyone's favorite country, you might see this and go, all right, so what? Looks like a pretty standard amount of juices. Well, that's what my girlfriend thought too as she walked towards it to find some kombucha. But to her surprise, this was not a juice section. You have been fooled. These are shelves upon shelves of different salad dressings, and this section actually carried on off camera. And as absurd as that might sound, it's just one example of what American grocery stores do best, offering way more options than anyone could ever need. My name is Edinger, and one of the things that frustrated me most after moving to the UK was this perceived lack of choice when it came to items in the grocery store. But keep that in mind, as later in the video I'll be talking about how the UK actually has more choice when shopping in a way I don't think you'll expect. And this was way more than just a culture shock thing. It really felt like I was missing out on a lot. Growing up in the States, I was used to having so many more options for pretty much everything you could ever dream of, not just salad dressings. To give you a more concrete example to show you the scope of things, let's just talk about Doritos. In the UK, you've got 3 flavors. You've got your nacho cheese, Cool Original, Cool Ranch. You got Chili Heat Wave, and more recently, Flamin' Hot. This has come across to the UK. Supposedly, according to the UK website, they also have pepperoni pizza and a cheese pizza flavor. I've never once in my adult life in London seen those anywhere. But hey, let's just assume that that's a thing. Well, that means you've got 6 total choices. Brits are like, what do you mean? 6 choices? I'm spoiled for choice. All right, but let's look at the US options. Well, starting off small, they've got the standard nacho cheese, Cool Ranch, spicy nacho, spicy sweet chili, flamin' hot nacho, flamin' hot Cool Ranch, dinamita chile limon. They've got tapatio, salsa verde, blazing. Listen, I'm not gonna read the whole list. There are 16 core flavors of Doritos in the States. And this is just one example. It's like that for everything. Cereals, snacks, soaps. The stores are absolutely packed with options. In the US, nobody is asking, why would anyone make a Sour Patch Kids flavored cereal? They're asking, why not? Because we can. And this is exciting. As a consumer, you have so much more choice, or at least it feels that way. And it always feels like there's something new to try and to buy. If you like Oreos, maybe you like one of the, not exaggerating, 200 flavors they now have, like Lady Gaga flavored Oreos. I actually don't want to know what those taste like. Maybe I'm not in the mood for smooth or crunchy peanut butter. Those are normie peanut butters. Maybe I want natural honey creamy, or coffee creamy, or omega-3 creamy, because that's a thing now. That's just one brand of peanut butter as well. There's so many other brands. And if you think about it, doesn't this kind of stress you out? Not the amount of options, this specific peanut butter. Oh, it stresses me out. Thank God they also created a stress-free version of the same peanut butter. Huh, you don't know how much stress I was under using the other version that is still for sale. When I first moved to London, this was the thing that felt like the biggest downgrade. The way American culture presents other countries is that they don't have as much as we do in the States. And you know what? They're kind of right in this regard. I went to my local Asda to do my grocery shop when I first moved here because I was informed it was like the UK version of Walmart. So my expectations for the ASDA, as I called it, were quite high. It's fun to shop at the ASDA. It's not. So color me surprised when instead of the biggest store full of everything I could ever want, from salsa dips to pickled flavored ice cream to bicycles and shotguns, instead I was offered what I can only describe as the offerings of a very large convenience store. Huh. You know how at a convenience store, they don't have all the space to give you all 41 flavors of Pop-Tarts, so you get to choose between the 3 most popular? Hey, that convenience store analogy, I think actually hits the nail on the head because there are literally only 2 to 3 flavors of Pop-Tarts on UK shelves. Different palates, sure, but Brits absolutely love a nice bag of Walker's Crisps, called Lay's in the States, but they only have a few flavors. And even the act of introducing flavors, other than like ready salted and salt and vinegar, was such a huge deal, the BBC ran a funny piece about it in their program called That's Life.
What muck have you got in them?
It's chicken.
Never. Well, they don't taste like the chicken I do.
Not snake, is it?
In the US, that would just be another day. I think the Americans are just kind of used to expecting wild and wacky things all the time in the grocery store. I've got an analogy for you. You know how when all you're looking for is a simple recipe with ingredients, but you have to sift through the author's life story and loads of other stuff you don't care about? That's what it's like shopping in the States, spread out over the size of 3 football fields. Bigger stores, more products, more time spent there making decisions. And there's a direct correlation between the time spent in a grocery store and the amount of money spent there. There's a reason why they're constantly changing the location of the milk. It's not because they forgot where to put it. But going back to my convenience store analogy, at the end of the day, I'd argue that offering fewer products is more convenient to both the store and the shopper. The store doesn't have all the space to store all 20 flavors of milk, so sure, the consumer misses out on root beer float flavored milk, but the core ones are still there, like milk flavored milk. From the consumer side, sure, you do have less choice. You can't argue that. but I feel like I can argue that's actually a good thing. I'm not bogged down with endless decisions on things that shouldn't really need them. Does it really matter what flavor Oreo? Not really, I should be sticking to more Whole Foods, but if you're like me and you forget to put tinfoil on your shopping list, you get to the store and you face an existential crisis. Which one's the best one? This one says it's Britain's favorite. This one says it's easier to cut. This one says it's stronger. Which one's the best? Do I go for the store brand? That one seems cheaper. Maybe it doesn't really matter. I'll Google it. I'll check Reddit. It's just tinfoil. But my brain won't let me pick the wrong one, okay? Now imagine this dilemma, but with 40 options of peanut butter. Maybe in this specific case, having fewer options is better. Real competition, on the other hand, among actually different brands is usually beneficial to the consumer. But when so many American brands pretend to compete by inventing new products to compete with these other brands, they often hide the fact that the other brands are all owned by the same company, the giant food conglomerate. This gives consumers the illusion of choice, where no matter how many of the options you pick, you're ultimately still making the same decision, the same choice to give your money to the same parent company. Maybe you prefer one of the many 60+ flavors of Ben & Jerry's ice cream in the States to the humble Cornetto, or a popsicle, or if you're a Brit, you might view a Magnum as a luxurious treat. All of these are owned by Unilever. You're not actually making a decision against one or for the other, you're giving all your money to the same company. Whereas in a fair market, all of these brands would be competing with one another to innovate and thus drive prices down for the consumer. In the end, the consumer can enjoy this illusion of choice, being like, oh, a new flashy thing, while the, parent company enjoys increased profit margins. And plus, now that these giant companies own so much of the market, they can just ruin the recipes that the original brands had created just enough so that they can still make more money, make more profits, and you are like, oh, I feel like it used to be better, but hey, they'll just gaslight you and tell you it's just because you're getting older, so it's fine. If you haven't seen it yet, I did make a video on how this happened in the UK with ice cream. Just hopefully in the US, you could keep ice cream safe. Also, a really big factor at play here is how much we buy, how much we consume as a society. Culturally in the US, you shouldn't talk with your mouth full. Culturally in the US, you often drive your car to the big grocery store and you take your cart around and you fill it up with things that last longer or ripen on the counter. And you have more places to store your groceries in your house, as American homes are, on average, significantly larger than European homes. I keep a lot of my stuff right here on the counter because, well, where else am I gonna put it? It's a little London flat, I love it. But still, shopping in Europe often involves more frequent, smaller trips to the grocery store, as oftentimes they can be just a quick walk or cycle away. This has been the case for most cities and towns that I've spent time in, but bigger grocery stores do exist for doing those larger shops by car. They're just not needed to be frequented as often. We have more convenient options. And this isn't just Evan's anecdotal data, by the way. This is backed up by data from Statista, which says that the average American goes grocery shopping 1.6 times per week, or 83.2 times per year. Okay, that seems pretty fair, but how does the rest of the world stack up? Well, according to the BBC, the average Brit is nearly 3 times that amount at 4.25 times per week, or 221 times per year. And that's not the average Londoner or the average city Brit, that's the average Brit. Wow. If you're like me, as soon as you saw that number, you'd be like, that is actually unbelievably high. I don't believe it. Where's the data from? But then I thought about how just yesterday I popped into the shops just to get a meal deal. And well, the day before I realized I was out of ginger and I needed it for a recipe. So I just popped on down to get some. Now, I wouldn't ever realistically do this in the States, as it's just such a ball ache. I would try and make the recipe without the ginger and then be depressed about it. You can't just as easily pop to the shops, as the shops have been either zoned to an area really far from your neighborhood, so you'd actually still have to get into your car, drive all the way there and back, or somehow worse, you are blessed to live near a shop. But the neighborhood was designed so horribly that it's inconvenient to get there by walking or cycling, and you basically just have to get into your car anyway. All right, let's look at a concrete example. People living on this street in Glassboro are right next to a Lidl. Too bad they put a giant wall up and made it so they can't just walk there. You'd have to walk all the way around to get there, including walking on this bit of Delsey Drive, which is just asking to die. So logically, if something as simple as popping to the shops requires getting in your car, sitting in traffic, finding a parking spot, and all that in reverse, you'd clearly not want to go as often, and I really don't blame Americans for doing so. Also, if you've ever popped into a random American neighborhood on Google Maps and wondered why the places look so dead, it's because they're empty. They just look empty, at least. There's no one walking. There's no pedestrians. No one's ever outside on the sidewalks at all. And if you did want to walk this walk to Lidl, well, oh, fancy that. The sidewalk just ends before it gets anywhere useful. You can see people want a comfortable place to walk to the store. You can see that clear path through the dirt. But God forbid, if anyone in a wheelchair wanted a convenient way to get around and be self-sufficient, no. Just pass through the grass. So much of it is infuriating. I just can't imagine if the roads were designed like that. You'd be driving a car and then it would just stop and be like, oh, what am I supposed to do? And they're like, oh, sorry, things aren't designed for cars, they're designed for planes. And you're like, that's not fair, get in the plane. All right, but back on topic, to throw another European country into the mix, the number of times that Brits actually go to the grocery store closely aligns with the Dutch, as 2/3 of Dutchies say they go 2 to 4 times per week. I mean, looking at this pie chart, there are a lot that go considerably more. Just throwing in some more Dutch representation since they enjoyed that video of me cycling to Utrecht I put on my second channel so much. So thanks, Dutchies. So by going more often, you can focus more on fresher items than longer lasting ones. And from personal experience, I'm not trying to pick up too many things I don't need, as every item I buy weighs down the basket I'm carrying around, not a cart, not a trolley. So I'd have to carry all of those things during my walk home as well, or these days I just pop it in the back of my bike basket. But I'm still having to carry around that heavy stuff in the store. So I'm thinking more critically, like, do I really need this 6-pack of beans? Maybe I could just swing by tomorrow and pick them up, or the next time. The shop's right around the corner. Or I could go to the other shop that's more close to me, that's more smaller, more of a convenience store. Hey, there's also another one down the road. In fact, all of them are quite nearby. All of these can be done by bike. All of these can be done on foot, many by car. That, to me, is spoiled for choice. Having the choice of when, where, and how I get my groceries. To me, that is a freedom I appreciate. If that means that I only get a few flavors of Ben & Jerry's, I guess I don't care. I do miss American Dream as a flavor though, so. You know, I'll take the positives over missing out on a couple flavors. In America, the land of freedom, the land of individuality and choice, you don't actually have a choice where it counts. You gotta drive all the way to the area where shops are allowed due to the zoning laws. I didn't want to cut this from the vid because I just found it interesting, okay? The largest grocery store in the UK is currently a Tesco Extra in Greater Manchester, and it's about 17,230 square meters. Woo! Or 185,500 square feet. That is the largest of any grocery store in the entire country. Now, the average size of a Walmart, just one brand, Walmart Supercenter in America, is 17,375 square meters or 187,000 square feet. So the average super Walmart in the US is bigger than the largest grocery store in the entirety of the UK. That to me is wild. The largest of the Walmarts in the US, by the way, is one in Albany, which is a whopping 24,150 square meters or 260,000 square feet. Wow. Also, to throw in some German representation, the supposed largest grocery store in the country is a giant Rewe around Munich, and that one is a paltry 11,000 square meters or 118,400 square feet. So the largest supermarket in the US is more than double the largest in Germany. So there's some fun facts for you to take away after this video ends. But if you are American that shops somewhere like Trader Joe's, you might be thinking, Evan, yet again, this is not my experience. Well, yeah, it's because Trader Joe's actually employs the more European model of grocery store. They don't stock every brand under the sun, and that's probably why you like it. They have a select few, and people shop there because the vibes. It removes a lot of the stress baked into most US supermarket designs. But I mean, the elephant in the room here, which is the final big reason I've come to prefer this style of grocery store in Europe to the US one, is it is just a little bit easier to be healthier to an extent. Let me explain. So from my research, I found that though it is true that pretty much in the US and most of Europe, grocery stores generally place the fresh produce at the entrance. So that way customers take that fresh vibe with them throughout the rest of the store. And from places I've lived in the US, UK, and Germany, well, they also enjoy placing fresh baked goods near the entrance because, you know, that's nice. Now, I don't want to get too lost in the weeds with this video more than I already have, but I need to define ultra-processed foods for those that don't know. Ultra-processed foods, UPFs, are highly modified, industrially produced foods containing additives like preservatives, colorings, and artificial flavors. They're cheap, convenient, and tasty. But they've also been linked to a range of health issues, including obesity, heart disease, and type 2 diabetes. The more UPFs in your diet, the higher the risk of these problems, since they tend to be high in sugar, unhealthy fats, and salt. So ideally, we would want a diet that didn't have a lot of ultra-processed foods. When it comes to the amount of ultra-processed foods on store shelves, the US takes the cake, with 3 times the ingredients in said cake. Even when I bought one of the healthier bread options from my local grocery store in New Jersey, my girlfriend, who was born and raised in England, said the bread was so fake tasting and had a homogeneous texture. That is because many grocery store staples, like bread in the US, contain 3 to 4 times the number of ingredients of their UK and European counterparts. Not that the UK is any sort of angel in this regard, by the way. In terms of the proportion of energy in one's diet gotten from ultra-processed foods, Belgium is at 30%, France 31%, Portugal only 24%, and the UK 55%. Yeah, I mean, hey, it's a little better than the US, kind of, depending on what source you look at. The US proportion is quite a bit more alarming. The National Institute of Health recently found consumption of ultra-processed foods represented up to 80% of the total caloric intake in the US and Canada, with confectionery and sugar-sweetened beverages being the most consumed items. I find that number confusingly high, and other reports that I've come across, I read about, they said that the percentage is closer to 60%. Either way, it's high. Personally, I think it's more close to the 60%, but I'd read this report that said 80 and I was like, wow. Okay, I'd like to not believe that personally. But another recent study I read found that US main supermarkets like Target and Walmart offer 41% more ultra-processed foods than the main supermarkets in France and Spain. So in general, it is a bit easier in Europe to avoid more ultra-processed foods, and some of the more heinous ingredients aren't allowed compared to the US. But Brits and most Europeans, from my experience, are a bit more discerning about wacky flavored things. There's a reason why in America, we invented Shrek green ketchup, a staple of my childhood. I don't want to know what's in it. But I think the big difference here is that the UK and EU often more quickly legislate based on health science, whereas in the US it takes quite a bit longer, unless you live in a more progressive city or state that actually wants to solve those problems. For example, in the UK, as of 2022, foods high in sugar, fat, or salt are no longer allowed to be sold within 2 meters of a checkout or designated queuing area in large supermarkets. Outside of Berkeley, California, who passed a similar law in 2020, from my experience in the US, every checkout has loads of candy bars for you to choose from while you're waiting, which does make sense from a business point of view. That stuff lasts forever, and it's sweet and tasty and addictive, and it's nice. But, you know, it doesn't make sense from a health point of view, which the business doesn't really care about. Doesn't really make sense to care about if their main thing is profit. But the US government isn't necessarily incentivized financially, morally, sure, but they're not incentivized financially to increase the health of their citizens because the citizens have to pay for their own health. Evan, how much did you tunnel for this video? Too far, man. Do you want to know what the difference in floor plans are between an average American supermarket and an average UK one? Well, say no more. Okay, we've got the Tesco Extra in Watford. This is what the store layout looks like. Pretty standard. Any Brits want to sound off, I'd say that most big-sized supermarkets, like the Extra of this Tesco, are pretty similar to this. Sometimes the store layout can be flipped symmetrically. Obviously, there are aisles in between each one of these little squares, but this is what it looks like, as opposed to this, which is a Walmart store in Utica, New York. Most every Walmart I've ever been to in the States is so big, you do have 2 entrances. Don't gift that. So you've got the entrance on the left where, yeah, there you go. You got your fresh produce, got all the grocery stores, and then, woo, so many different things. I did find lots of floor plans for Targets, but that just made me weep because I thought I really, really wished more Americans didn't shop at Target because the design layout of those does seem way, 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 way more predatory, as in trying to get people to buy things they don't need, and they just put things in really obscure locations. It's clean there, I will say. I like going to Target, but after looking at the floor plans, I don't think I'd want to go there that much more. I didn't want to show the Target initially because the Target floor plan looked so dystopianly bad in terms of the shopping experience that I didn't want viewers to think I was like cherry picking floor plan information to be like, this is how Americans shop, because it's not true. It's just Target, it seems. Walmart's fine. Most every grocery store I've ever been in the States is fine, but every Target floor plan that I was able to find looks like it's designed to make you buy the worst things possible and put everything that you actually want as far away from the entrance as possible. So maybe stop shopping at Target. But this is also probably why many Americans and Brits are really coming to love Aldi and Lidl. Not only are they significantly cheaper than these standard supermarkets, but they bring from Germany the more streamlined shopping experience. Fewer brands, select products, and hey, a nice bakery section. Just wish they sold the Laugeneck outside of Germany. Come on, please! The only way I could realistically see more smaller, frequent shops happening in the US would be if the states, cities, townships, whatever, updated their zoning laws to allow for more small shops to be right around the corner from your house. At the end of the day, this is the biggest reason for America's current predicament. The very outdated zoning laws of most US areas force a separation between where people can live, or residential areas, and commercial areas where people sell things. Like, for instance, where people buy their groceries, which is why most of the US have suburbs where you have to walk 45 minutes to find a grocery store. And the walk would be, well, let's say less than pleasant, so you drive anyway. The zoning laws can be so nonsensical that they result in stories like one out of Fort Worth, Texas, where Three Brothers' lemonade stand got shut down because, well, you can't have a commercial enterprise in a residential area. That's crazy! If you want to open a lemonade stand in the States, you need to get the necessary permits and then sit out front a giant parking lot, as God intended. Fun fact, I actually did have a lemonade stand on my small street in New Jersey when I was a kid, so I guess I'm a little law-breaking child, I'm so sorry. But whether you currently use the US-style grocery store or a more European-style one, at least we can together be happy that at least we're not Australia, who only have 2 big supermarket chains that collude as a duopoly to raise prices for customers and not pay their farmers a living wage. But hey, that's a story for another time. Just trying to have a slight positive spin on it. At least we're not down under. I've very much gotten used to British products at this point, but there are still a list of like very particular items I find the UK doesn't do well that I do have to import, but I'll save that for a future video coming to your subscription feed soon. Also, a big thank you to helping me hit 800,000 subscribers recently, by the way. It's been a long journey, so thank you, and here's to the next 200K. Now, one thing that happens all the time when I'm researching for videos like this is I get a page like this. Thanks for visiting. Sorry, page isn't available. Kind of weird, right? Well, the page actually is available. They just region locked the content. So that's when I use today's video sponsor, NordVPN. It is weird that I have to use a VPN to access educational news material on the internet, but that's the world we live in. I don't even trust these pages anymore, but I just instinctively go up to NordVPN app in my menu bar, click change my browsing location to somewhere in the USA, usually just New York, and bam. Wow, look at that. The page miraculously is available. Not only does NordVPN allow you to access news and sites like this that are region locked, but it also protects your traffic from your ISP or any other prying eyes by placing all of your traffic through an encrypted tunnel. Google tailored their results based on your browsing location, so a lot of the times when I'm researching videos like this one, I just slap on NordVPN in New York or somewhere, and then I can actually find what I'm looking for. And because NordVPN is the fastest VPN out there, none of my research is slowed down. If you'd like to sign up to NordVPN and try out their 30-day money-back guarantee, use my link, nordvpn.com/Evan, and you can get a huge, mega discount on a 2-year plan, and you get a few months for free just for using my link. So thanks NordVPN for sponsoring. Well, I have already kind of wrapped this one up, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Otherwise, if you want to know why ice cream in the US is better than the UK, you can learn about that in this video here. I'll see you there. Goodbye.